Hey guys, welcome to today's video. We're going to be talking about the Chicago Bears defense and what it's going to look like in 2021. Before we get started though, please drop a quick like and a sub on today's video. That would really help my channel grow. And with that said, I hope you enjoy the video and let's dive right into it. So when we talk about the Bears defense for a sec, we got to talk about their standout from last year and really how they ranked last year. So their leader in tackles was Roquan Smith with 139 tackles. He was up there among the league's best in that regard, had a really big season. And interceptions-wise, Tashaun Gipson led the team with 2 interceptions. This team did at times struggle to get turnovers, but overall, Roquan Smith, the heart of that defense, was absolutely massive. But let's just talk about their stats from last season and where they ranked among the NFL's defenses. Where were they in comparison to other defenses? And you got to remember, this Bears defense has been pretty good over the past few years. Last year they ranked 14th overall among all teams in the NFL in that regard. And then, if we look at some other of their metrics, passing defense, they ranked number 12th in passing defense, so 12th in passing defense, 14th in total defense. And then rushing defense, we saw them at none other than 15th overall. So above average defense. This was an above average defense. You've got to remember that. But at the same time, they're going to have some more issues next year. And the real issue stems from some of their losses, right? Obviously, they lost Kyle Fuller this offseason. They don't have Buster Skrine anymore. So the secondary is not as good as it was last year. And more importantly, they've got some players that are on the older side, and they're getting older, and they're going to need to produce at some point. So let's start by looking at this defense. Let's just go through these players. I mean, we got to start with Akiem Hicks, who is one of the leaders of this defense. He's a guy who can really get after the quarterback. And, last year, sure, he only had 3.5 sacks, 30 solo tackles, and 49 total tackles. Had a fumble recovery. But overall, it wasn't the same season as the season before where he really, 2 years ago, where he really went off. But nonetheless, he's a guy who can really get to the quarterback a little bit, and he's a real impact player for this Bears defense. And if he has a big season, and he's a real bounce-back season at age 32, which is kind of unlikely, right? It kind of is unlikely. You don't really see players really come back at age 30, 31, 32-ish. I still think that his ability to get after the quarterback, that's something that the Bears defense needs. They need guys who can get to the quarterback. And we saw Robert Quinn last year who kind of struggled with that. Obviously Khalil Mack is going to be doing Khalil Mack kind of things. But Akiem Hicks, if he can have a big year, I think that would be really big for that Bears defense. Let's go back to the Bears depth chart for a second. I just want to talk about Eddie Goldman and Bilal Nichols. Goldman, one of the better nose tackles in the NFL, really solid guy at stopping the run. That's what he does. I have no worries or concerns about him. Him and Akiem Hicks are really good up front. Bilal Nichols, at the same time, I don't love him. Definitely a guy who's not really talked about. Definitely not a household name. But Bilal Nichols, he's been with the Bears for a few years at this point, and he hasn't been that great, to be honest. And we were expecting kind of a big season from him last year. Thought that his 3rd or 4th season in the NFL. I think that was his 3rd season last year. I want to say, don't quote me on that. We were expecting a big year for him, but that never really ended up occurring. We didn't really see that breakout performance. So look for him to maybe have a big year this year, but I don't really know what his long-term future is in Chicago. I just think that at some point he's probably replaceable. But to start this 3-4 base defense, I mean, Akiem, Eddie Goldman, they are going to need to have big seasons because it all starts up front for this defense. It really does. And then, you get to Khalil Mack, who can really rack up sacks and rack up a ton of sacks. I mean, 9 sacks last year, 3 forced fumbles and an interception, 29 solo tackles, 50 total tackles. This guy runs all across the field. He's arguably one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, one of the best outside linebackers in the NFL. He is the heart, the soul, the reason this Bears defense is good. He's the reason this Bears defense is good. Remember, this was a top half defense in the NFL last year. This was a top 15 defense in the NFL. And the reason because that was Khalil Mack getting to the quarterback. Absolutely massive. He gets double teamed all the time, still able to get there and just be productive, be annoying, be just all over the place. And that's exactly what the Bears need from Khalil Mack. They need him to be a leader, and he's going to be a leader for them. That's his job. That's That's why he's being paid the big bucks. But at the end of the day, he's going to need to continue having those solid seasons year in and year out. If they want him to continue to succeed. And then, I mean, if we look at Robert Quinn for a sec too, I think that's another interesting guy to look at. They need a pass rusher opposite of Khalil Mack to be productive. Last year, that was not Robert Quinn. You can see those stats: two sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Yeah, the 3 forced fumbles are nice, but 2 sacks is not good enough when you're paying a guy the amount of money that Robert Quinn is being paid. And yeah, sure, he's at age 31, age 32 next season. Robert Quinn is really just he didn't play well enough last year. He simply did not play well enough, and I think that's going to be a massive thing for that Bears defense. They're going to need him to really show up. Excuse me. They're going to really need him to show up. And if he doesn't show up, I don't really know how productive this team's going to be. They need a true pass rusher across from Khalil Mack. I don't know what my computer is doing at this point. But they need a real pass rusher across from Khalil Mack. And if Robert Quinn can be that guy, then Robert Quinn's going to be that guy. But they really need another guy that can put up 7-8 sacks across from Khalil Mack. Jeremy Attacochu, he's solid. He's a guy that's been able to be productive at times in his career. Before, he had 5 sacks last season. I believe he played for the Denver Broncos. He's a guy that's, he can rack up the sacks. He's not going to put up like 12 sacks in a season, but he's a guy that can give you 5-6 sacks, be a productive player for you in a situational pass rushing role, and that's what he brings to the table. So watch out for him next season. But I like Khalil Mack. It's just really the depth behind him. Is there another guy that can rack up big time sacks? Because at the end of the day, after Khalil Mack, I don't really see any other person on this team other than Akiem Hicks, who I have some confidence at getting to 7 sacks. Now though, let's look at the interior of this linebacking group, and let's start with Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith, as I said, had an absolutely fantastic year last year. 98 solo tackles, which ranks 2nd in the entire league. I think that's probably behind Zach Cunningham or Jaylon Smith. I don't know which one. Zach Cunningham, I think, led the league in tackles last year. But 139 total tackles, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions. This guy is a playmaker on the defense side of the football. He's all over the field. He's annoying. He gets to the football. He's got a knack for the football. He's got a sideline-to-sideline speed. He's got all the tools you need to be an elite linebacker, and he is an elite linebacker. He's established himself as one of those elite linebackers in today's game. And although he doesn't get enough credit, this guy is on the rise, and he's going to be the heart and soul of this Bears defense. Him and Khalil Mack at linebacker position, that's scary. That's really scary. And because Roquan Smith, it's not just him just getting to the football, it's also him being able to get to the quarterback too. So overall, Roquan Smith, that they need a big season from him too.
So sorry for that. My screen ended up cutting out, so I had to refilm this. But I was talking about, obviously, Roquan Smith, and I think that he's going to be a massive part of this defense next year. But let's talk about his linebacker partner in Danny Trevathan, who, has definitely not been as good as he was a few years ago, but he's still a solid veteran middle linebacker. 67 solo tackles, 112 total tackles, a sack last year, a forced fumble. He's a guy who's a hard hitter. He's able to close down on running backs, really just get to the football, and him and Roquan Smith are one of the better middle linebacker duos in the entire NFL. So I think that Danny Trevathan and Roquan Smith, the real linebackers of this Bears defense, are going to be the best part of this defense, right? Khalil Mack, another linebacker for this team. Robert Quinn, if he can get going, that's going to be big. All these guys have high potential to be big producers, and I think that Trevathan is another one of those players that could really help out this Bears defense. So, as I was saying, you just look at these linebackers and you see Mack, you see Roquan Smith, who I think is one of the best middle linebackers in the entire league. You see Danny Trevathan as a veteran there. You see Robert Quinn, who has the potential for big sacks. Do I think he gets those big sacks? We'll end up seeing what happens there. But the real crux and the core of this defense in the linebacking core is its strength. In the secondary, though, is where I'm a little worried. Sure, Jaylen Johnson is going to be their number 1 corner, but remember, they lost Buster Skrine this offseason, as well as Kyle Fuller. Jaylen Johnson, 40 solo tackles, 72 targets last year, 41 receptions allowed. The PFF grade for him wasn't too good, but overall I liked his speed, I liked his length, and I liked how he played at times last year. He showed off some potential, and I think that potential allows him to be a solid cornerback 1, although I don't think he's going to be a great cornerback 1. I think he'll do the job. I think he'll get burned just because, The corners on this team are not deep. Desmond Trufant is not what he used to be for the Atlanta Falcons. Detroit last year, he really struggled. And then there isn't too much depth at corner either. Artie Burns is a fine cornerback 3, but there isn't really that elite cornerback anymore. Kyle Fuller was that guy, but they decided to move on from him just because of pure money. He was up near $20 million a year for his salary. So they decided to move on from him this offseason. But at the end of the day, this is a team that definitely the secondary is going to hurt, especially at the cornerback position. I think that they're going to get burned at corner because I don't think Jaylen Johnson's completely ready to be that number 1 corner, and Desmond Trufant isn't as good as he was a few years ago. At safety, though, I liked what Tashaun Gipson was able to do last year. Led this team with interceptions, with 2 interceptions. He's just a hard-hitting safety. He's all over the field. I really like what he brings to this team. And then Eddie Jackson's going to do Eddie Jackson-type things. One of the better free safeties in the NFL. Sure, he's getting up there in age and is probably on the downcline, or the decline, rather. But him and Tashaun Gipson were solid last year, and I think they'll be the anchors in the secondary. So really, it's all about how can the corners really step up? What's the cornerback play from this Bears defense? But more importantly, how much pressure can the Bears get on the quarterback? Because their linebackers are going to be able to stop the run, and that Khalil Mack's going to put up sacks. But can Akiem Hicks show up? Can Robert Quinn show up? Can some other pass rushers like Jeremiah Attacochu show up? Those are the questions. How much pressure can this Bears defense really get on the quarterback? And then how solid can they play in the back end? Because if they can really bring pressure on the quarterback, the secondary is going to be much better. But if it's really about how can the secondary keep up, I don't think the secondary is quite good enough to allow for the front 4 to be better. So it's really all about the front 4 and about the linebackers, about the pass rushers. How much pressure can they get? I think we'll see some regression next year from this Bears defense, especially just without Kyle Fuller. When you're missing one of those top corners in the NFL, I think that's really going to hurt. And replacing him with Desmond Trufant is not an upgrade whatsoever. And also Buster Skrine, that's not a massive loss, but I still think it's a quality corner that you lose. So I don't really like the secondary here in Chicago. And although this Chicago Bears defense has been one of the better defenses in the NFL over the past few seasons, I still think that next year we will see a little bit of a decline here for Chicago's defense. I still think that they'll probably be in the top half of the league, but much closer to average than where they've been in previous seasons. So watch out for that for the Bears defense in 2021. And with that said, that's pretty much going to end the video for today. Did you agree with my analysis? Why or why not? Leave your comments and thoughts in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you're new around here, please drop a like and a sub on today's video. I'd really appreciate that. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, see ya.